Once again, we have a mass shooting at a site of higher education in the United States, a story that has become all too often, or all too common. This time in Oregon at Umpqua Community College, a gunman opened fire early today, about 10:30, killing at least 13 people. Reports are saying, including the shooter, who has been identified as a 20-year-old man, wounding at least 20. Various hospitals in the immediate surroundings of the community college and as far as 70 miles away are being used to funnel the shooting victims. Now, we have information from the fire marshal, Ray Schufler, who says that they arrived to find multiple patients in multiple classrooms. So this was a shooting spree that went on a course throughout the university. Law enforcement was on scene and had the shooter neutralized. We have already some interviews are being done with students who were on the scene of the shooting, saying that they had very differing ideas of how many different shooters there were early on. People thought that they had heard shooting in different locations, and so there was fear that there could, as is always the case in these shootings, that there could have been additional shooters on the loose. As of right now, we do not believe that that is the case, and the only one who came to the university has been killed. 2 patients died while being transported to a hospital, and again, at least 13 so far.
That's from the that's the highest number yet so far reported today. That's from the Attorney General's office, and just because the numbers have changed, there's some chance that that number will change too, and hopefully
will change again. Yeah,
and hopefully they've counted some people twice. Hopefully,
yes, it's possible.
Go down, but
some sources are still saying 10.
Yeah, so but either way.
But anyway, as I said, it's almost every day. It feels like.
Yeah, there are different studies, different reports out that people keep referencing, and you can check it out on my Twitter account because I just posted it, showing that we have one mass shooting a day at this point in the country. And it's become so commonplace. And part of the reason why it's so commonplace is because every single time that it happens and it's covered in the media, the conversation immediately devolves to 2 sides. There's one group of people who say, oh my God, we need to focus on mental health care. Of course, those are usually the pro-gun advocates who have no interest in gun control whatsoever. And then you have those who want to make a point about how we need common sense gun control. That doesn't mean a gun ban, but it certainly means that there's something wrong with our current system.
Yeah.
And the second that you bring that up, you're immediately attacked as someone who's politicizing a tragic event.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't use this instance as an opportunity to talk about something that we clearly need in the country, when do you talk about something like gun control?
I would add on to what you say. You said they have no interest in gun control, which is certainly true. I would argue they also have no interest in any policies having to do with mental health. They will say it in the immediate aftermath of a shooting, but I think they have no real interest. It certainly doesn't seem to be a legislative priority. Now, in this case, I've read reports that say that 4 weapons were removed so far. We have absolutely no idea how they were attained. It might have been legally, it might not have been legally obtained. We'll find out at some point. But we know already that, as you said, it has been politicized. People have been going on Fox News and saying, well, this is what you get when you create these gun-free zones, asserting that Umpqua Community College is a gun-free zone, which of course it is not, because back in 2011, Oregon passed a bill saying that you cannot actually designate public college campuses as gun-free zones. But they still just say it because they're so ready to, because they say it in every case. It's not actually true here. He didn't go there because he could be sure that there were no guns. He went there probably because he had an attachment to the college. That's why people go to these. He didn't go to a random college. He didn't cross the country to go to a college. But anyway, we hear these same storylines every time, and it's extremely frustrating.
Former Attorney General Eric Holder, again, he's no longer the Attorney General. It gives him a little more freedom, I suppose, but 3 pretty good tweets. Now, Oregon, we weep again as a nation. Is the answer to our gun violence epidemic to do nothing again? Come on, America, we solve problems.
Politicizing.
Then he says, right, enough. Now, Oregon, what reason now to oppose safety measures? Other nations have not had these mass shootings after implementing reforms. And then finally, he says, gun safety measures will not by themselves stop violence, but as part of a comprehensive effort, this great nation can be made more safe.
Yeah.
A couple other little facts worth mentioning. This is the 45th school shooting in the United States this year.
It's incredible.
School shooting in the United States this year. And it's been 34 months since the Sandy Hook shooting in December of 2012, and there have been 142nd school shooting since Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
It's also the second shooting in 10 years in this town, this small town of Roseburg. This college is apparently about 70 miles south of Eugene and 180 miles south of Portland. It's fairly close to the California border. In 2006, a Roseburg High School freshman named Vincent Iadarola shot a fellow student named Joseph Monte 4 times from behind in the school courtyard. Thankfully, the kid survived.
Wow.
But, so this has happened before here in this town.
And you know, there are officials from the town who have already spoken to the media about this, and they keep reiterating that they live in a very peaceful community, that they're shocked that this happened. But I think that it's relevant to bring that up because if you live in a culture that's obsessed with guns, it really doesn't matter if you live in a so-called peaceful community.
Yeah.
You're not safe. Doesn't matter if you're in a classroom, doesn't matter if you're in a movie theater. We're now living in this age of extreme gun violence. And it's scary to know that it doesn't matter where you are, you could be a victim of this.
Yeah. I want to really fast. I want to circle back around to the whole what conversation we should be having after these sorts of shootings. But I want to add on to what you were saying about how often this is happening because we have 2 ways of sort of illustrating that. And the first, you're going to see a chart, the time between mass shootings timeline. And you're going to see that on the right-hand side of there is a massive collection. Now, that's not to say that America doesn't have a long, storied history of mass shootings. These are mass shootings, not simply mass shootings at universities, but they seem to occur in clumps, for one thing, I see after Columbine. And most recently, there are a very large number over the past just 4 years. These are the 45 shootings at schools in 2015, indicated there. There were 3 school shootings on February 15th. That was a particularly bad day.
By the way, you're going to hear those the argument now about how if you have how the armed good guy with a gun will beat a bad guy with a gun, and the right uses a lot the pro-gun crowd. I mean, there are plenty of people on the right who are in favor of at the bare minimum common sense gun control, but the far right, the Ted Nugent crowd, the anti-American crowd, that suggests that you get a guy with a gun that would stop these, and they always cite these examples, and I won't run through all of them, but again, there's a good piece in Mother Jones, but they're all wrong. Every single case that they use where they say a good guy stopped it, frequently either another good guy was shot or nearly shot, and almost every time the shooter had stopped shooting, sometimes was out of ammo at the point, or had just gone outside and thought, as happened in Colorado, he had done his task was done. His evil task of shooting was done, and he was laying down his weapon. He was like, yeah, I'm finished. That's it. So they almost never make a difference.
Yeah, we talked about one earlier this week.
That's right. We had one this week where the guy was shot in the head and thankfully still alive. By the way, this college, Umpqua Community College, not a typical college. The shooter was 20, but I think as of a couple of years ago, the average age in 2013, the average age there was 38.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is mostly grown-ups, and most people are not full-time. About a third of the students are full-time. So
And again, we don't know exactly how these guns were acquired or if he had weapons outside of the 4 guns that we've heard about so far. So I have no idea in this case what a particular policy or set of policies might have done if they had been in effect or anything like that. But the idea that it's just the mental illness. And we already heard, I believe Ben Carson has already talked about this in the wake of today's shooting. Do they believe that other countries don't have mental illness? That the UK is just oddly free of any sort of mental disease? It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's significantly harder to get a gun in the UK. It's just that for whatever reason, nobody is crazy in the UK.
Yeah.
And that conversely, in Australia, they had a period of a good number of American-style mass shootings, and then they passed a bill that took back most of the guns, as many as they could, and made it extremely hard to get a gun in the future, which had the interesting effect of right after that, you couldn't be crazy in Australia anymore.
Weird.
So there's no more mass shootings because they took away the guns, and now nobody's crazy. It doesn't have to do with the guns, it has to do with the craziness. We have all the evidence we need. We can see that when you take away the guns, you get less shootings, regardless of the level of insanity in the population.
I'm not an expert on the history of Australia. It's not going to stop me, though.
It didn't stop me.
But the part of the argument is that the United States has long it has a violent history. Its independence came violently. That's by the way true for a lot of places.
That's true for most places that are independent.
Its independence came violently, and then we have this peculiar one of the things that people love about American. We have this rugged individualism, right? That you make it on your own and you defend what's yours on your own. And if you have to defend it with a gun, you defend it with a gun. That's been true about our history for 230 years. I find it hard to believe that Australia did not also have a sense of rugged individualism.
Yeah,
in
I
fact,
have a
if you were
feeling-
going to rank countries by rugged individualism, I'm going to guess they're first.
Yeah.
Like they strike me as the most ruggedly individualistic country. And I have no doubt that there were men in Australia who loved their guns and protected their families and protected their homes with guns, and they got past it. They got past it. And we can get past it too. But not in the current political climate at all, and not with the guys who have the majority in Congress in charge. They'll never do it. They'll never do it.
No, it's either people talk a lot about the amount of donations that the NRA gives out, and that could influence some races. We've also seen analyses that show comparatively, compared to other lobbies, they don't provide that much in funding. It just might be that because they provide something and there isn't an organized version of it on the gun control side,
right,
that even a few dollars is enough. But they have this outsized control that doesn't make sense. I don't think it makes sense to gun opponents like us. I'm not against guns in all cases, but I certainly think we need more gun control. I don't even think it really makes sense to the NRA how they've been able to gain so much control over our legislation when they represent what should be such a niche concern.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I mean, I haven't looked into this specifically because this conversation kind of came up spontaneously, but I'm curious to see whether or not weapons manufacturers fund these campaigns as well, because it's not just the NRA. I mean, the NRA is powered by weapons manufacturers funding them, and they in turn obviously fund these politicians. So I don't know if there's a direct link between weapons manufacturers and our politicians, but that could play a role as well.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly an indirect one because they fund the NRA and then the NRA gives out the money.
And then also another thing to keep in mind, the NRA is one of the most powerful lobby groups in the country. So they have a lot of power regardless of how many dollars they give to politicians. And we know how cheaply you can purchase a politician. It doesn't take a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's just if your identification with who you are as a man, and it's mostly men we're talking about here, if your identification of who you are as a man is this tied up in your guns, that's messed up, and that's got to change. You have to separate. You have to choose to identify yourself, to find the core of who you are somewhere else in some other manner.
Yeah.
You can still be everything that you are, you can still have, but you can't wrap up who you are and the measure of how much you care about your family or how much you care about your friends or your dumb land can't be wrapped up in the kind of guns you own, how many guns you own, and how tough you are with those guns. It just can't be that. That is something messed up that we have in this country.